This is Just Women, every Tuesday at 1 o'clock on Brooklands Radio.
Welcome back to Just Women with me, Anne Twist, introducing our interviews with guests we met via Zoom over the last couple of weeks. And here I am chatting with Guildford-based author Nikki Smith about her new novel, All in Her Head, which was released at the beginning of April. Well, it's lovely to have you join us on Just Women.
Thank you so much for having me, Anne.
So obviously we wanted to talk to you about your book. It's your first novel, I believe.
It is, that's right. It's my debut novel.
And so it's a suspense thriller. Is that right? All in Her Head, it's called, isn't it?
That's right. It is I think it's marketed as a suspense thriller or psychological suspense. Yes, that kind of genre.
And it was released, I think, beginning of April, thereabouts?
That's right, 2nd of April. Yes, the hardback came out.
So I know you had lots of events planned as part of the launch, so that's all had to be shelved, but you've been able to do various things online, I believe.
Yes, that's right. Unfortunately, launching a novel in a pandemic isn't the easiest thing to do. It was such a shame because obviously I had a launch planned in Waterstones in Guildford, and then kind of lots of events kind of scheduled for after that, really, that by my publisher, Orion, and everything had to be cancelled as soon as we went into lockdown. So yes, it meant that I never got to celebrate with family and friends, and I haven't actually seen it in a bookshop yet either. So yes, hopefully in the next few weeks.
But it's been really successful, I believe. I mean, just before we kind of talk about what's happening now around the book, let's just have a little bit about the backstory, because I know you launched the book in April. Prior to writing the book, you were in finance, I think, and you'd previously done a degree, hadn't you, in English literature many, many years ago, or maybe not that many?
That's right.
So where were you at university?
I was at university in Birmingham many years ago, and I did do an English degree. Loved it, loved writing. Tried to write a novel after I left university, but it did get a bit of agent interest, but it wasn't, it was, I mean, looking back, it was rubbish, quite honestly. And at that point, I just gave up, really. I thought that I wasn't, good enough to be an author, and I just thought it was something that either happened for you or didn't. So I dropped any kind of ambition, really, to do it, and pursued a career in finance. Worked in lots of different places. Worked in a property company, worked in a bank, worked for a trampoline park.
Oh, wow.
And then, yes. And then a few years ago, somebody contacted me on Facebook, a lady that I was at school with 20 years ago, hadn't heard from since, and asked me whether I'd ever done anything with my writing, because she still remembered the stories that I'd read out at school. Goodness knows how, actually, because it was so many years before. But I think it gave me a bit of a push. It was one of those real now or never moments. And I thought, right, I'm going to give it another go. This is what I really want to do. So I signed up for a creative writing course with Curtis Brown, who are actually a large agency in London. They're a literary agency and a kind of film and talent agency, actually, as well, but they're kind of mostly literary agency.
Yeah.
They run courses, and I completed one online. I loved it. So I signed up for one which was a bit longer, where you have to apply. They only kind of pick certain people. And that's where I worked on the draft of the first draft of All in Her Head.
Right. Okay. I read that you've been on these courses. So that was still very much, you were still working full time, I assume. I know you've got a family, haven't you? You've got 2 daughters. So you were juggling all of this work, doing the course. So the course is 3 months. So how much commitment is there involved in doing one of those courses online?
Yes, that's right. I mean, they do run courses actually in their offices in London, but I couldn't do that because I was at work and childcare issues as well. So it does require a certain amount of commitment beforehand, but it was manageable, I would say, with my job at the same time. It just meant that I was kind of working weekends and evenings and things like that, trying to fit everything in together.
Yeah.
So, but I was really determined to use the time to get one draft out. Right.
Okay. And I've no idea how this works. So obviously you were doing the course and learning very much as you went along. And is it a bit chicken and egg? What comes first, the characters or the plot, and then you develop the characters, or do you know the ending when you start? I'm so interested in the whole process.
I think it's different for everybody, really. I mean, for me, I had an idea before I went on the course of what I wanted to write about plot-wise. I knew what the story, or the central story and theme of the book, was going to be, and one of the characters, Alison, was quite firmly established in my head before I started writing, and then everything else kind of came around that, if you like. But there is a definite, I mean, it might not again be for everybody, but the book developed even after I left the course. That was kind of draft one, and I was delighted that I actually managed to finish a full draft. But books take a long time to develop, and that one draft very quickly becomes 5, 6, 7, kind of going back and doing it again and working on it to try and make it better.
And I gather you had some kind of pitch to an agent opportunity, didn't you? While you were doing, was that during the online course or the later courses? You did a pitch?
That was still doing an online course.
Okay.
It was just that kind of one online course, and you got a chance at the end to pitch a covering letter to an agent and get feedback on it. And I was kind of keeping a list of agents who I liked by looking at what they kind of talked about on Twitter, and who they represented, books that I thought were similar to mine. So I wrote my letter to an agent called Sophie Lambert, who works for C&W, which is part of Curtis Brown, and she gave me some feedback on it. Some good feedback on it, and then eventually after the course had finished, I then managed to get a mentor, another author called Amanda Reynolds. She ran a competition on Twitter and was looking for people to mentor, so I worked with her for a few months, and we kind of looked at the first few chapters of the novel and just went over it again and tried to make it the best it could be, basically, and then submitted it to a number of agents, and one of those was Sophie, who was really who I wanted from the beginning. And she agreed to meet me and represent me.
That's fantastic. I mean, you hear about people writing novels and going around the agents and it just not happening. I mean, obviously you're very, very talented, but that was a good series of events for you, wasn't it? I mean, what was the kind of time frame of all of that?
I guess it was from when I first went on the course. That was probably 2017, early, the first kind of online course I did. And then I had Sophie by kind of 2000 and probably about a year and a half later.
Okay.
2 years later.
Right. I mean, I don't know if that's typical or not, or whether that's atypical and you've been very lucky, or I know lots of other authors now, don't you? I mean, what do they say? Presumably you had an expectation.
Yes, I mean, again, I think it's very different for different people, because it takes different, we've all got different working commitments as well, and it depends how long it takes you to get that draft written. And Sophie is quite a dedicated, she gave me lots of editorial advice as well. So although I signed with her, we had to work on the book for another few months before she submitted it out to publishers. That's what you have to do. So I was really fortunate. That's one of the reasons that I wanted her, because she can give you a lot of her experience and input.
I read that, actually. I read I think it was an interview with both of you together, and I could see that not only did you have to do lots of drafts, but you also changed from present tense, you changed from the past tense to the present tense, didn't you? And removed lots of flashbacks and things like that. That must be quite difficult.
Yes, it's I actually changed both my characters. The book's written in a dual narrative between two different characters, Alison and Jack, both of them are written now in present tense and first person voice. So I did this and I did that. Whereas when the book was first written, I had both of them in third person. So I changed the entire book. Which isn't something I'd want to do again, I have to say, but it was well worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's very much a learning exercise. And I know you signed up with Orion, didn't you, on a 2-book deal, which is fantastic. So I guess the first book is all about learning your technique and your style. And are you kind of well into the second book now, or not?
Yes, I've just handed my second book into my editor, actually, to go through. So I'm waiting for edits back, which is always a bit of a nerve-wracking time for a writer. Not quite sure what's what's going to come back, whether it's big structural edits or kind of small ones. Let's hope it's smaller ones. But yeah, so that's the second one.
Fantastic.
Anyway.
I guess even though you've had a very successful book, and we'll get onto that in a minute about how successful it's been, but even if you've just had one, I suppose there's no guarantees they're going to love the second one, so you must be nervous every time, presumably.
Absolutely. And to be honest, although you've written, or I'd written a book, the first one, and I think every author I speak to is the same. Every time you sit down to write another one, it feels like you've never done it before.
Yeah.
You're sitting down with a blank page, and it's just kind of, what am I doing? Did I actually manage to write a novel before? How did I do this? So yes.
Yeah, I can understand that. I've got a good friend. She lives in Sydney, Australia now, and she has for many years. And she published her first book about 4 years ago. And I think she's on to number 6 or 7 now. And I think that every time she feels like that, have I got another book in me? So, so good for you. So I don't want to spoil it for anybody. And I certainly listened to an excerpt last night, the one in the library. It's exactly my kind of book, so I'm very excited to read it. But perhaps you could outline for our listeners, that kind of outline of the story without giving too much away, if you can.
Yes, well, I'd say it's a psychological thriller about the darkest corners of a mother's mind. And one of my protagonists, Alison, is convinced that her ex-husband Jack is stalking her, and she's convinced that Jack is stalking her until the mention of one name turns her world upside down.
Okay.
So it's really finding out what happens after that point. You're kind of thinking, is she losing her mind, or is it all in her head?
Okay. And I think there's a bit of a twist, isn't there, at some point? I don't know if it's at the end. Yes, I read this somewhere.
Yes, there is a large twist in the book that happens. I think one of my reviews in the press said it was like being hit by an express train. So I don't want to give too much away about the plot because I like it to come as a bit of a surprise to the reader.
Absolutely. No, I think it sounds amazing. I know it's been likened to the start of it. It's been likened to Gone Girl and Girl on the Train. I don't know how you feel about that. And I saw on your website, there's just a long list. It just wouldn't stop of all these people praising it, other authors, which is just fantastic. Obviously, you've kind of built up a lot of kind of quite a strong network of other authors now. Is that through Orion or just on Twitter, or, how does that happen?
I think, I've been very lucky. The crime writing community has been incredibly supportive, and I think they are supportive to debut authors. So I'd met in inverted commas, a lot of other authors on Twitter before my book was published. So I'd had conversations with them and got to know them. So I was very lucky that a lot of them agreed to read my book before it came out, really. They get sent proof copies, and a lot of them read it and yes, have been really complimentary, which is lovely.
Yeah, that is great, I suppose, actually, to get such plaudits from other writers that you respect, that's amazing, isn't it? And I presume that, because it's gone to the sort of bestseller list on Amazon already, I think, hasn't it?
It has been, yes, at number 1 on Amazon. Yes, you don't hold the flag for very long, sadly, but you get a little orange flag which says bestseller when it was. So yes, that was really lovely.
Yeah, I would imagine. And presumably, you're with Orion. They must have quite a sort of slick PR machine to kind of get the word out, because I know that you've had lots of press attention already, haven't you?
Yes, I think the book gets sent to, I have a publicist at Orion, Francesca, who's lovely, and she sends the book out to various different newspapers and magazines, and then it's really up to them whether they choose to review it. And I've been very lucky. It's had a lot of press publicity and kind of very nice things said about it. So yeah. Yes, I'm delighted.
Yeah, I was reading them last night. Amazing. What a lovely feeling, your first novel. When did you actually give up your day job? Or have you not given up your day job? I don't know. I assume you have.
No, Yes, I did give up my day job. I still do a little bit of freelancing every now and again, but no, I gave up my day job when I got my 2-book deal. I think that I realised that it was going to be too tricky for me to kind of hold down my kind of finance side of things and work on another book, because I knew I would have to deliver one within a year. So
yeah.
So
I wondered what the deadline was. So you've delivered the first draft. When do you have to kind of deliver the final, the final edit, or have you, or is that now down to them to do the edits? I don't know quite how that works.
Yes, I think with me, I'm on a reasonably flexible deadline because Corona has pushed every kind of schedule of anybody's out. So I mean, hopefully the book will be out around the same time as the first one was, but in 2021, so April 2021. So yeah, when I'm not panicking about having to get edits done, and also a lot of books have been moved schedule-wise as well, because of the virus.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm hoping it will come out in April, but not sure yet.
And what's after that? I mean, is this the kind of book that you could see being made into a TV drama or a film or anything? I mean, is that being discussed? You said Curtis Brown, I don't think they just do books, do they? They do film and TV as well, or I got that wrong?
That's right. They Curtis Brown do, but my book has actually, All in Her Head, has actually been optioned for TV by a company called Palmer Pictures. So it was optioned just before it came out, which is very exciting. They were kind of local producers for The Crown and involved in The Night Manager and things like that. So fingers crossed. I mean, a lot of books get optioned for TV, so you never know what's going to happen. No. But yeah, fingers crossed.
Amazing.
It will be on screen at some point.
That's just fantastic. I'm so impressed for you and so happy for you. To go to uni, to study English, to write a book, to then look at it and think, oh, that was rubbish, different career, and then to come back to it later in life. How old are your children, by the way? I meant to ask you that.
I've got one who's 15, or almost 15, and one who's almost 13.
Oh, okay. So it's not like you've got little ones, but so I guess it's a little bit easier now. What do your girls think of all this?
Oh, they love it. Yes, they're really proud of me.
Yeah,
which is really, really nice. And I think it's taught them, resilience as well, and perseverance, that if you keep going, if you really want something, then you can get there in the end.
Yeah, hard work, perseverance, commitment, dedication, all of those. Oh, that's amazing. I could carry on chatting about this for ages. I think it's a really interesting subject. I don't think we've given away too much about the book. Let's tell the listeners again what it's called.
It's called All in Her Head.
And they can find it on Amazon. They're going to be able to find it in Waterstones soon, I think, when it reopens. And somewhere else, I think you said Tesco. There's an audio version as well, isn't there?
There is, that's right. Yes.
And more importantly for me, can we download it to Kindle?
Yes, you absolutely can. Yes.
Right, that's on my book group's next list, whether they like it or not. I'm really looking forward to it. It's been really lovely chatting with you. I think we've come to the end of it now. If anyone wants to find out more about you, you've got a website, I think. If you could just tell us the website address, that would be great.
Yes, it's www.nikkismithauthor.com, and Nikki is Nikki.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Nikki. That's great. It's been lovely having you on the show.
Thanks ever so much, Anne. It was lovely to chat.
I really enjoyed chatting with Nikki, and I have to say that since we recorded that segment, I've read All in Her Head and can very much recommend it if you're a fan of suspense thrillers. That will really keep you on your toes, I think.
This is Just Women, every Tuesday at 1 o'clock on Brooklands Radio.